Okay, very good to see you all. Uh, this is our last session before a break, just a short break, 1 week break. And then we'll have another segment of 5 classes before we break for the summer. Boy, this summer will probably be pretty hot because it's already hot and we're in the middle of June. So we're going to begin with the prayers to set a motivation. Sangye chodang soki chognam la Changchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunen gipe sognam ki drola penchir sangye drupa sho. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly due to the collections I create through listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Shankar, are you going to be able to put up the prayers? Doesn't look like it. Sangye chodang soke chognam la changchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penchir sangye drupa sho.
I'm sorry, it's not sharing. I've shared it.
It's not on mine.
Okay,
Shankar has started screen sharing.
okay, let me share my entire. Okay.
Anyone else see the prayers? Are they up there?
Let me share my.
It says that I'm viewing Shanka's screen, but it doesn't show anything. Oh, there
Okay, there we go.
Can you see it now?
We can see your desktop that says ISO 2D.
Arg. Okay, well, I don't know why the share isn't working, Venerable. I'm sharing my desktop, so
you have to have that file open, maybe the prayer.
No, I
file.
do. I have it all open. Let's try this. How about this? Is that better?
There you go.
Oh, I guess I had multiple safaris open. Okay, so I had them all. Okay.
By offering this ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, a Sangye Shing, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Thank you. So we're going to begin, as always, with some meditation. So find yourself a comfortable position. Relax your body. Relax your mind. I may take some sips of water during this. For some reason, I had 8 hours of sleep last night, the first time in years. I'd taken an acetaminophen and ibuprofen, sort of just keep my mouth dry. So I may be sipping water during a meditation. Okay, so sit comfortably, relax your body, relax your mind. Place your mindfulness on the breathing in front, to the exclusion of other thoughts. Give up paying attention to other thoughts, thought processes. Invest all that mental energy into just the mindfulness of the breathing. If you are counting the breaths as a way to add more burden to your mental consciousness so that it has even less space to attend to other thoughts. If you start to multitask, you lose recognition of whether you're breathing in or breathing out, or you lose remembrance of the count. Go back to 1. Start again. And if you had a little success in calming the mind, if you're doing this on your own, you wait until you have some success. Right now, we assume you've had some success in calming your mind. Now bring your attention to your mental consciousness. You can think as an aid, withdrawing your attention away from your 5 senses to your 6th sense, as though it's centered at your heart chakra, like withdrawing the limbs, a tortoise or a turtle withdrawing its limbs into its shell. So you're not going to pay attention to your eye consciousness, the input from your eye consciousness to your ear, so forth. And although the tendency might be to imagine or to see, to cognize with your mental consciousness darkness if your eyes are partially closed, that's because of the input from your eye consciousness. Just watch your mental consciousness. See the content, and through that, the content meaning the thoughts, emotions, comments that you're making to yourself. Through recognizing the content, you can apprehend the substratum of the mental consciousness itself. Like a clear sky, in the sense that it is not obstructing. Not like a clear sky doesn't mean like blue, azure or blue or something like that. It just means the sense one has in thinking about a clear sky, not so much thinking of the color, unobstructing to thoughts entering or leaving. To recognize this as our conventional clear light nature of our mind, the conventional clear light nature of our mind, as opposed to the ultimate clear light nature of our mind. This is also called our developmental Buddha nature. And we can rejoice thinking about this, thinking of whatever problems I have, I can overcome them. The mind is limitless in its ability to improve. There's only a certain limit it can degenerate, fortunately, even though they can go to great depths, but its ability to improve is limitless. The fact that we can recognize this right now and rejoice is because we have this auspicious moment that is a long time coming. We've been struggling in cyclic existence from beginningless time, numberless times in the lower realms, most of the time in the lower realms, hell beings, pretas, animal realm, even as humans. Oftentimes, the rare times we were born as humans because of the practice of morality and generosity, we had extreme hindrances, like the people who are going to the Hajj in Mecca now, incredible heat, even as a human, or cold, or floods, or winds, earthquakes. We were slaves. We had no ability to practice the Dharma. Now we do have this. It's found once in such a long time that we should take advantage of it. We can see things clearly now, like the aftermath of a bolt of lightning on an otherwise dark night. Everything, for an instant, everything is illuminated and clear. Like this instant, meaning this life, we can see what's happening. We can see the suffering of others. We can see the crazy things we did earlier in this lifetime, karmically speaking. And we can aspire to clean up our act, but more so through having heard the Buddhist teachings, because we have this auspicious moment of leisure and endowment. We know we can either work for the future life, to create the karma, to have a life of a human or God in the future with comfort and pleasure and so forth. But really, as the teacher said, even that doesn't even qualify as a real practitioner of the Dharma, which is going to at least aim for liberation from cyclic existence. Or if one has heard the Buddhist teachings, has the incredible fortune to hear the Mahayana teachings about bodhicitta, how rare it is and how valuable it is to purify even the greatest negativities and to create incredible merit on a par with the merit accumulated through practicing guru devotion. That particular mind is engendered through developing a warm heart towards sentient beings, developing compassion for them, and empathy, exchanging our situation with them, imagining what their suffering is like the Hajis in Saudi Arabia now. And taking the responsibility to alleviate their suffering, having understood the only way to do that is having elevated our mind, achieving enlightenment for the sake of them, so that we, from that position of enlightenment, we can extract them, not just with our hand, but through our teachings, our inspiration, our blessings, slowly, whatever time it takes, with our omniscient mind, knowing exactly what needs to be done to lead them effortlessly into that enlightened state, even though it may take eons for any individual being. To achieve that state, we need to have accumulated the collections of merit and wisdom, which up till now we've been ignorant of. Maybe just peripherally, we've known that collecting good karma would be beneficial. But did we know about the collection of wisdom that's explained in Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom? Chandrakirti's entering into the middle way, Lama Tsongkhapa's illumination of the intent of the middle way. So think, I'm going to participate today, listen to the teachings, contemplate the meaning, weigh it in our mind, and when we have insight, hold that for some instance to develop the three wisdoms of hearing, contemplation, and wisdom. As a hearing, contemplation, and meditation, think, I'm going to participate today in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. That's our goal in participating today. Okay. So thank you. Good to see you all. Jennifer's here, Amy's here. Good to see you all. So I just wanted to share with you, let me see if I have it on here, interesting article I read the other day. Tony Cakes is sort of like Italian mafia name, right? Probably Anthony something or other, who had a sweet tooth, and he was called Tony Cakes, a former Genovese crime family captain, was reportedly decapitated by a truck as he crossed a Brooklyn street last week. He spent and one of his companions said he spent his life looking over his shoulder. Excuse my accent. but he forgot to look both ways before crossing the street. Well, this is according to a police source, so we may still have that. So, yeah. So in common parlance, we would say, the world would say, karma's a bitch. So in Buddhist terminology, would say that, you cannot experience a result without having created the cause, and that Tony Cake's vigilance to keep other assassins away from him for all those years was in vain at the end, because the karma got him. Okay, I just wanted to share that with you. One never knows, when the karma comes, it can come at any time. Okay, so how are we doing? Any burning questions? Jennifer, how are you doing? Any questions?
Many, but none that come to mind right now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Michael Hoffman, how about you? Do you have any? We see you occasionally. Do you have any questions that have been perplexing you?
Thanks, Michael. I was wondering if we were going to close the loop on the discussion last Saturday about this, because the sprout has not yet arisen, how it can be the agent of arising. I felt we kind of went around the merry-go-round a few times on that without ever really tying it back together or making it all make sense. So,
okay.
Speaking more length, but that's the one that's kind of been circling in my
Right. So there isn't much more discussion in the text. The point is that from the Prasangika point of view, even though from the lower tenet's point of view, you need to have the sprout present in order to consider it as being the agent of its arisal. Right? That was the thing. Usually when we're talking about cause and effect, the seed is the cause and the sprout is the effect. But when we talk about the activity of arising of the sprout itself is the agent, and that arising is one of its qualities. In Tibetan, we talk about Chu and Chun and Chu Chen. Chu is the Tibetan word for Dharma. You write it CHOS, so it sounds like a short O at the top. Chu Chen means that which has qualities, or that which has that basis. So you could talk about the sprout being the Chu, and the Chu Chen meaning the activity. For the lower tenets, the sprout has to be present for it, to have that activity. Whereas for the Prasangika, even though the sprout is not yet present, it is conventionally, it's nameable because it is being produced, and that's sufficient to qualify for that status. So although that may not feel completely closed off, we can go back over that in the discussion group on Monday, or even in the next class after the break. But let's leave it at that
Let's leave it at that. That was good. That helped a lot, actually. I appreciate
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Okay, so, okay, anyone else have, okay, so, I think we are at the point, am I wrong? Refuting arising where cause and effect are regarded as simultaneous. Is that where we're about to start? Yeah, okay. So just to reiterate, I thought I had the page number there, but I don't. Just the paragraphs before that from what we mentioned last time. If one understands, reading Jimpa's translation,
219, Venerable.
219 in what?
In the, sorry, in Jinpa's text.
219 or 119?
219.
Huh. I keep on putting the wrong numbers down. I had in my text 119, but anyway, okay. If one understands how to posit the flawless Madhyamaka standpoint on the basis of understanding well how to refute the opponent through these types of reasoning, maybe these types of reasonings, and how our arguments do not revert to our own side, one is then a true Madhyamika. So we mentioned last time, we'd gone over that. The point is that when the opponent raises certain positions and you were debating with them, which we'll mention in a second, in order to refute them by these various reasonings that are renowned in the Mahayana, like that Nagarjuna proposed so many different kinds of reasonings throughout his fundamental wisdom, but particularly the reasonings here in the first chapter about refuting production and so forth, and how those arguments, those faults that we attribute to others, don't fall back on ourself. Then one is a correct, a proper Madhyamika. In contrast, if in contrast we encounter those who utter all sorts of fallacious arguments when engaged in refutation, so they're claiming to be Madhyamikas, but they're using wrong arguments when engaged in refutation. But when these arguments are upended, they seek haven in duplicitous bluster. So Venerable Joan translated that in the FPMT translation. At the time of refuting, it means these pseudo-Madhyamikas, having mentioned only superficial reasonings, not really the getting down to the core, when they are turned back against oneself, against that pseudo-Madhyamika by the people they're debating with, one can only set out denials. What did Jumpa say? Something about duplicitous bluster. We should relate to them, as Chandrakirti says in his clear words, I will not debate with those who blatantly deny what is obvious, or in other words, who are crazy. So that's where we ended last time. And just in regard to that, Brother Shanka had asked me the other day, because he's going to be starting some retreat, and he wanted to know whether it was worthwhile learning Tibetan debate. It's so attractive, right? I don't know if you see. So my answer may surprise you. I think for most of us, to spend a long, long time in that and to, it may not bring a lot of fruit. To certainly to learn the fundamentals of it is very good. And as we have learned in class about what constitutes a correct reason, what constitutes a consequence, how those statements can be set out to the opponent and so forth, that's very useful. But my own experience over the years was that the people who, let's say, went to Sarah J. and for years studied debate, their understanding of Dharma was no greater than those who just went through our, let's say, our classes with geshes, translated into English, augmented in some cases if they knew Tibetan by reading the Tibetan text, scrutinizing it well, or in our cases, if you don't know Tibetan, seeing the various translations and trying to ferret out through discussion with the teachers what the right meaning is. I found that those individuals had much better understanding of the Dharma, interestingly. I remember when I begged Lama Yeshe several times, please, Lama, I want to go to Sarah to learn debate. I want to study at Sarah. And Lama said, no. It was very stern. Put on his wrathful face. And he said, I want, if I can, you can imagine Lama speaking, I want example of a Western student make realizations in English, as an inspiration to others that you don't need to learn Tibetan. The famous Tibetan expression is, you don't need to know Tibetan to take Tibetan medicine. You don't need to know Tibetan to eat Tibetan food. And so Lama's point was that we'd reached the point now, especially now, this was 20 years ago when I asked, or 30 years ago, we've reached the point now we have so many authoritative texts and so many teachers available at this one moment. We're so lucky right now, who knows what's going to happen, that there's no need to, especially to go beyond, to learn colloquial Tibetan, unless you want to, you're welcome to, or to learn debate, to spend, a lot of time in that. Sometimes I remember at Instituto Lama Tsong Khapa when it was kind of in fashion, Fabrizio, who was then a monk, this Fabrizio Palotti, who's famous translator of Tibetan and famous as friend of Richard Gere also. I don't know if any of you know Richard, Fabrizio. Anyone ever, Don, you must have remembered him from Aptos area, right? He
yes, and I remember him being Riba Rinpoche's aide,
Right. So Fabrizio was a monk at the time, and he sort of, we have to have debate when we were studying Prajnaparamita with Geshe Jampa Gyatso. And it turned out just to be, in the case of some of the Italian monks, kind of like putting down the other person, and it's kind of like the gladiators, or two people fighting to the death or something like that. So I didn't find it. It turned out to be that useful. So anyway, that's my answer to that, and in relationship to these debates. Okay, so now our next section, refuting arising from other, where cause and effect are regarded as simultaneous. So what? Are cause and effect simultaneous? Richard, what do you think?
I don't see how they could be.
No, generally we recognize Most Buddhist schools recognize cause and effect as sequential, but some of the Vaibhashikas consider certain situations to be examples of cause and effect being simultaneous. So let's read. So this is verse 20 of chapter 6. If for visual cognition, what exists at the same time as itself, the eyes and so forth, as well as concomitant discrimination and so on, are its producer, what need is there for it to arise since it already exists? If you say it does not yet exist, we have already shown the faults of this. So, is that verse clear on the surface? Mintu, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, the universe is a big place. So it could be like what we attribute to causality is it's a set of time, right? So there has to be a time. Then when there's
What's the word you're saying? It has to be a what?
there has to be a flow of time, like a linear flow of time. Then we can say two events happen, one after the other. But then there's no time, then you can say that things can happen simultaneously. So when there's no time, it means that, if you go back all the way to the Big Bang, then there's a singularity where time doesn't exist. So, but we know that, from the Buddhist point of view, the universe expand and contract all the time. So it means that whatever at a point of singularity when there's no time, cause and effect might have arise, spontaneously.
Okay. So yeah, okay. That's a MIT graduate take on that. Okay, I don't buy that, but anyway. So here, this is the Madhyamika speaking. This is Chandrakirti speaking. Venerable Joan translated that stanza as, if an eye awareness exists as other than its producer. So when we're talking about eye consciousness, what are its producing factors? What are its causes, let's say? Usually, what are the three causes that are necessary, or three conditions that are necessary? Mikhail, do you know for a consciousness?
The objectile condition, the dominant condition,
right?
And forget the other one. Third one.
What's it called? What's the third one called? Anyone?
Preceding consciousness.
Oh, preceding, yeah.
Immediately preceding condition. So what that means is dominant condition means the eye, if you're talking about eye consciousness, the eye faculty, which doesn't mean the eyeball, it means the subtle material there within which eye consciousness can come, that acts as an interface between an object and the consciousness. So that's the dominant condition. The objective condition is the object itself that you're seeing, the reflection of which is on the retina. And the immediately preceding condition is that there was an immediately preceding moment of consciousness that can morph into that eye consciousness. It can mean the immediately preceding instant of eye consciousness, or a preceding instant of any of the other consciousnesses that can then act as that immediately preceding condition. So those are necessary. So if an eye awareness exists as other than its producer, the simultaneous eyes and so forth, and the discrimination and so forth that arise simultaneously. So what arises with an eye consciousness that's simultaneous with it are at least the five omnipresent mental factors, such as discrimination and so forth. So that's what's being referred to there. Since it exists, what sense would there be for it to arise? You know, it's already existing. What kind of meaning would there be for it to arise? If someone says that does not exist, the faults were already explained concerning that. Okay, so a little bit opaque there. Let me just read a little more of the text, then I'll go back to how Geshe Sopa went into this. Thupten Jinpa's commentary translation reads, the opponent here asserts the following. Now arising from other may be untenable for seed and sprout. You know, he's agreeing. Okay, you got me. Maybe you can't have other production for something like a seed and a sprout, which have no intrinsic otherness owing to their lack of temporal simultaneity. Do you remember what that means? Because they're not simultaneous, they can't be other than one another. You know, even conventionally. For, you know, let's say, according to the lower tenets' point of view, they can't be other because to be other, like Maitreya and Upagupta, they would have to be simultaneous so that you could compare them. However, arising from other could exist when causes and effects are simultaneous. That's what that person wants to say. Since if the causes and effects are simultaneous, you could consider them as being other than one another. Make sense? Savanj, make sense? Yeah, okay. Take, for example, eye consciousness and its concurrent factor of feeling, its concomitant factor of feeling, and so forth. So that means, remember, of the 5 omnipresent mental factors, feeling and discrimination are 2 of them. Did it mention discrimination just in the, yeah, it mentioned discrimination in the root text. Here it mentions feeling. Wait a second. Did I say feeling? I thought it said feeling. Yeah. I went too many pages. There we go. Since they possess real others. Take, for example, eye consciousness and its concurrent factors of feeling and so forth. Its concomitant factors of feeling and so forth. Just as eye consciousness arises through the mere coming together of eyes, visual form, which is form, that means the objective condition, the mikyan, and so on. And the third condition would be the immediately preceding condition. Just as eye consciousness arises through the mere coming together of the eyes, form, and so on, as well as feelings and so on, just as eye consciousness arises through the mere coming together of eyes, forms, and so on, those would usually be the causes, right? Here it says, as well as feelings and so on. In the same manner, the eyes, etc. Let's leave off the etceteras. We just use the example of the eyes. In the same way, the eyes, as well as the minds that are concomitant, serve as conditions of feeling, and so on. So some opponents might assert, or as Venerable Joan translates, objection. The opponent here asserts the following. Production from other may be untenable for seed and sprout, which have no inherent otherness owing to their lack of temporal simultaneity. However, since cause and result, cause and effect do exist simultaneously, maybe we should say could exist simultaneously according to this opponent's view. However, since cause and effect could result simultaneously, otherness exists there because they would be simultaneous. Therefore, there is production from other. For example, the I consciousness and the feeling and so forth, which are simultaneous with it. That's giving a more clear translation. So two things are simultaneous: the I consciousness and the feeling that arises within it. From our study of tenets before, many of us, we went through, and low rig, we went through these kind of examples. The feeling from the upper, above Vaibhashika, let's say Sautrantika and above, the feeling that's simultaneous with the I consciousness at any moment is not the result of that I consciousness. It's simultaneous with it, and that feeling is the result of the previous moment of consciousness, right? I see Stephen nodding, Richard's nodding. Okay, good. So this we're talking about from the Vaibhashika point of view. For example, the I consciousness and the feeling and so forth, which are simultaneous with it. The I form, that means visual form. Here, neither FPMT translation or Jimpa went out. Usually when you say Zuk or Rupa, it has various meanings. In the case, when you're talking about I consciousness and you use the word Rupa or Zuk, which is the Tibetan, you're talking about visual form. So that's the object of I consciousness. So the I, the visual form, and so forth, and the feeling and so forth that simultaneously arise produce an I consciousness at only the same time. Likewise, the I and so forth and the mind are also conditions for the arisal of feeling and so forth at only the same time. Okay, so at this point, let's see here. Geshe Zopa said the following. This was in July 12th, 2002, almost 22 years ago. Geshe said, some Vaibhashikas, certain Vaibhashika systems, not all Vaibhashikas, but certain ones. Remember when we had when we studied the Vaibhashikas, there were various segments of Vaibhashika, the Kashmiri Vaibhashikas and the central Vaibhashikas and everything. So certain Vaibhashika systems say cause and effect do not necessarily occur at different times in all situations. It can be simultaneous. They say simultaneously, Lenchik Jungwei Gyu. So this, when we talked about the various causes earlier, just a couple sections, maybe few weeks ago, when we talked about the different divisions of causes, one of them was the simultaneously acting cause, which the upper tenets would not accept, but certain Vaibhashikas accept. So Lenchik Jungwei Gyu. Gyu means cause, Jungwei means arising, Lenchik means together or simultaneous, simultaneously arising cause. Their viewpoint is that these simultaneously acting causes are like leaning upon each other, like a tripod, right? Like the actual tripod. If you take three sticks and you try to get them to hold together without putting string on it, right? Without it being all glued together or anything. Can you do that? Has anyone ever seen that? Making a kind of a tripod in your yard, putting some things up. You have to balance them, and they all depend upon one another. So they're simultaneous. So that's kind of their view. Each other leaning each other that help each other. So therefore, each other. They help each other for not falling down, etc. So helping. So that's kind of one of the meanings of causality, helping to exist like that. So that's why they consider those to be simultaneously acting causes. In the same way, the I consciousness, when it arises, when any of the six consciousness rise, with that, there are omnipresent factors. Primary consciousness has a special kind of Lenchik Jungwei Yu, simultaneously acting cause. That means the five omnipresent mental factors, secondary minds like feeling, discrimination, and so forth. There are at least five. Some schools say there are always 10, but those usually we say there is at least always five omnipresent factors. Five omnipresent factors are accepted for all primary consciousnesses. So therefore, when primary consciousness rises, it rises together with, along with feeling and discrimination. They help each other causally. For example, when a table or some physical thing rises, some visible thing like that, it must have other objects there that arise together with it. Say, for instance, object of touch. Does the table have a tangibility, Richard? Tangible object?
Yes, it is. I'm just trying to, I'm having a lot of difficulty understanding this entire section. So forgive me. That's why I was looking up. I was trying to parse it.
Okay, no problem. No. So is there something you can enunciate, or is it just not clear enough to enunciate yet?
I don't think it's clear enough. I've tried reading that verse many times today, and I just can't figure it out. So
okay, yeah, the verse
continue, and maybe it'll be a little bit clearer.
Okay, the verse itself is a little bit opaque. It needs commentary. That's why Chandrakirti wrote his own Basham, and Lama Tsong is explaining it. And even there, those explanations assume you know other things from Abhidharma. So this was what Geshe Zopa was explaining. So you've got consciousness. It will always arise with five omnipresent mental factors. So certain Vaibhashikas say that those omnipresent mental factors, let's say, being simultaneous with the consciousness, like the tripod, they help for it to exist. So they have a causal relationship, simultaneously arising causes and conditions. It arises together with feeling and discrimination. They help each other causally. For example, when a table or some physical thing arises, when a visible thing like that arises, so a table can be an object of sight. You see it with your eye. It also has tangibility. It also has, if you were to spill something really good on it, and you lick it, the table also has some taste. It has some odor, depending on what you've, let's say if it's just a brand new table, it'll have its own nice wood odor and so forth. They must have other things like that. All of them come together. They come together in physical things physical things is born. So Lenchek Jungwei Gyu means the four elements together rise in one physical thing. So Geshe is giving an example here from the Pramanavarta that's famous in the Pramanavartika, not just talking about eye consciousness. Now we're talking about another example of things that arise simultaneous. So the various, let's say, if you have a piece of molasses in India, what is it called? You know, you can when you get cane, when they crush the sugar cane, you get sugar water you can drink, right? But when you evaporate that a bit, you get what? What's it called?
Jaggery.
Jaggery, or what we call in the West molasses, I guess, similar. Sometimes it comes kind of solid. If you go to the market in Dharamsala and you get it sort of like hunks, it's not like liquid molasses you buy, Aunt Jemima molasses or something like that. It's actually hunks. So
It's so good.
so good, yeah. If it's clean, yeah. So that molasses has a taste, or that jaggery, that hunk, let's say a little ball, has a taste. It has a feeling. It has a tactile sense, right? It has a color. It has an odor. It may not have its own sound, because that's of a different continuum, but it has all of these other things, atoms of these other things inherent in it. They come together, physical thing to be born. So the four elements come together in one physical thing. So a physical thing has four elements: the earth, water, fire, air element are all there, according to Abhidharma. In the case of something solid, usually the earth element predominates, so you don't notice the water element and the fire element and the air element, right? Whereas in other things, another element predominates, and that's what seems to be its dominating quality. So in addition to those four elements, there are always, those elements are called Jungwa Shi. Do you remember that, anyone from Abhidharma? Those are the four elements. Come again? Sache, yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Sa is earth, Chu is water, Mei is fire, Lung means wind, right? Exactly. So when those are present, there are always the derivatives of the what are called jungyur, or secondary elements. And those are, examples of those are atoms of visible form, although science, we wouldn't accept that. Atoms of smell, of odor, atoms of taste, atoms of tactility, and so forth. Those will always be present there, like the ball of jaggery, right? Because it is composed of the four elements, there are present within it also the derivative elements. There's something of smell. It has some smell due to the derivatives of the four elements. It has some tactility. It has some taste, and so forth. That's what's being talked about. Okay, following so far? Jennifer, what do you think? You've got your thinking mudra. Richard also, yeah. Okay. There are many people who believe this, of the lower tenets, that cause and effect are not necessarily sequential, so that they have this example of simultaneity. So I wanted to read a little bit from Geshe Zopa's teaching about this. So at this point in the text, at this very point, Geshe went on to explain something about this, and he quoted from the Pramanavartaka. Let's see here. if they arise simultaneously, then whatever result exists, whatever result comes about is going to exist at the same time as the cause, right? Because they're simultaneous. Any result exists at the time of the cause, then what is the reason? What if a cause exists at the time of the, if a result exists at the time of the cause, then what's the reason for its production? It doesn't need production. This was a segue into some explanation. We'd already mentioned that here. It doesn't need production. It already exists at the time of the cause. The cause doesn't produce, maybe the same time exists, but it doesn't cause anything other. So this you should know further. This is the point. Geshe-la gave this statement. Nugu sokpa chikla rakle ki delwa. So there is a relationship of relying upon one causal collection. So this is a big topic in the Pramanavartaka, in the first chapter, in the sections that we've been talking about some other sections from Pramanavartaka. So the Pramanavartaka usually is from, at least from the Sautrantika point of view. So it's not going to be accepting simultaneous cause and effect. But those things that look like for the Vaibhashika as being simultaneous cause and results, or cause and effect, they have a relationship. Like, say, for instance, the feeling and the eye consciousness, they have a relationship, but it's not a causal relationship. They're not a natural relationship either, although it might seem like they're a natural relationship. Say, for instance, also the jaggery, the molasses chunk, solid, not liquid molasses. Its solidity, its color, its taste, its odor, all of them are simultaneous with that piece of jaggery, right? But they are not of the same nature. Solidity is not of the same nature as odor or visible object or tactility, but they still have a relationship which in Tibetan is called Nogu Sokpa Chikle Chikla Raleki Delwa. So I'll post some of this later. Nogu means direct cause. Sokpa means collection. Chik means one, so one collection of direct causes. Rakle means dependent on. Delwa means relation. They have a relation of relying upon one causal collection. Very famous in there. So maybe this will, Geshe-la was talking about, maybe this will come down there, Buram. Did anyone remember what the Tibetan means, Buram? We talked about it a couple of times. You'd have to have a good memory. Buram is what we're talking about, molasses or jaggery, right? So remember we were talking when we talked about bodhicitta. The bodhicitta, certain kind of bodhicitta is like molasses like bodhicitta because it doesn't yet have, it only has the taste, or sugarcane like bodhicitta because it only has the taste. It's not the same, or biting the sugar cane itself is not the same as actually tasting the crushed water and so forth. So that word has come up before. Anyway, if you hold some kind of sugar or something, some molasses like that, some jaggery, some physical thing that is gross, it contains the four elements, earth, water, fire, air, and so forth. It also contains the result of the four elements, the jungyur, or secondary elements. physicality means, some physical things. Color, right? Objects, there are objects. It is an object of eye. It is an object of taste. It is an object of smell. Those are zukti, ro, reksha, for example, those four together. You know those words from the Heart Sutra, Zuk is form, visible form. Ti means what? Smell, odor. Ro means taste. Reksha means tangibility. Those are all on the sugar. So there's a famous verse in chapter 1, and John, I can send you also the Sanskrit later when you're home, so you can work with Paul if you like to play around with the Sanskrit of this verse. So the Tibetan says, chapter 1, verse 9, it says, Sokpa chikla ralegpe, zukla sokpa rotokpa. That's the first line of that, or the first two lines in Tibetan. So one translation of that by Gavin Kilty, who's translated that first chapter, comprehending form and so forth from taste, which depend on the same collection, is inferring the property of the cause. So anyway, what this means is that it is possible to understand that there is form of the jaggery. Say your eyes are closed, by tasting it. Generally, is taste a cause of form, of visible form? No, but it can be in the same collection. What we say the same causal collection of things. And so there's in this section of the Pramanavartika, it goes about explaining how it is possible to infer that through taste, to infer the visible form of something by its taste, if you know a lot of other things, that they form one causal collection, that they are together like that. Okay, so we'll go a little bit more about that on Monday. I won't read more of what Geshe said right there, but we're going to post. Doris will post this one from Catherine Rogers' text on Tibetan logic, which is sort of like a translation of the texts on what we usually study when we talk about what are we talking? My mind is blank now. Tariq, senior moment, thank you. So, kind of like debating with Trump, he would catch me and say, you're no longer reliable. Your mind is going. So Tariq. So Tariq means signs and reasonings. That's one of the subjects that's studied that we didn't get a chance to study in our own curriculum yet. Very, very interesting. And so it deals a lot with Pramanavartika and other things, it goes into detail. So in her text, so let me read a little from page 170, and you can follow along, I think, if you have the interest. Doris has put up their excerpt from Tibetan Logic. Okay, you can open that PDF. So on page 170, so with the second paragraph down, the Gelugpa discussion arises from a passage in the Pramanavartika in which Dharmakirti discusses the Samkhya assertion. Okay, remember the Samkhyas? And so Pramanavartika, does Pramanavartika agree with the Samkhya? No, they refute everything Samkhya, right? Samkhya is a non-Buddhist tradition, right? Where Dharmakirti discusses the Samkhya assertion that it is valid to prove the existence of the present form of molasses or jaggery from the existence of the present taste. The present form and the present taste. Those are simultaneous, right? They certainly could, from Buddha's point of view, they couldn't be cause and effect. The Buddhists do not consider this valid because there is not a strictly defined logical relationship between taste and form, visible form, right? Before discussing the Samkhya and Buddhist points of view, it may be helpful to make clear the basis of the debate under consideration. So I'm just going to mention this a little bit because Geshe-la had gone into this in detail at this point with regard to that 9th stanza of Pramanavartaka. So before discussing the Samkhya and Buddhist points of view, it may be helpful to make clear the basis of the debate under consideration. In some Buddhist texts, the subject of the debate under consideration is with a lump of molasses in the mouth. So when it's saying lump, that means it's kind of like the jaggery, not like the liquid molasses, like a hunk that you go down and you buy from the store by the kilo. You know, you can actually hold in your hand and toss in like popcorn if you like. The subject of the debate under consideration is with a lump of molasses in the mouth. Of this, Geshe Pelden Drakpa says, so Geshe Pelden Drakpa's contemporary Gelugpa Lama, who was the first one who gave me the complete teaching on the Madhyamakavatara. We read together, I told you a couple of times, the whole text from the beginning to the end in many, many sessions at Tibet House in Delhi many years ago. I didn't understand very much, but Geshe-la was pretending I understood what he was saying. So Geshe Drakpa says, some books use this as a subject, but I have qualms about it. It is strange. These, that is to say, the Buddhists and the Samkhyas, are skilled opponents, and it doesn't make sense. In his opinion, the basis of debate, a lump of molasses, is not very helpful. If a lump is present in the mouth, it will be directly perceived. And who then would have doubt concerning the existence of the form? Why would a sign even be needed? Okay, so leave that. You can read sort of like some of these qualms. On the next page, on 171, about a paragraph down, another quotation from Geshe Pelden Drakpa. According to the Samkhya, one infers the present form from the present taste, right? However, for the Buddhists, the existence of the present taste is not a correct sign in the proof of the existence of the present form, because there is no relationship between the sign, the taste, and the predicate of the probandum, form. Okay, so you can read on further there if you like. Just giving you a little taste of this. Excuse me. Okay, so then on page 172, about 4 paragraphs down, just before that it says, well, let me read the paragraph before that. There is an apparent agreement among Gelugpa scholars that 2 inferences are generated in dependence on the syllogism under consideration. With respect to the subject with the lump of molasses in the mouth, there exists the capacity of the former taste of molasses to generate the later form of molasses because the present taste of molasses exists. So to understand that, you'll have to read that readout a little bit. One is the inference realizing that the former taste has the capacity to produce the present form. Okay, former taste of the molasses has the capacity to produce the present form. Does that make sense? Only if they are part of one causal condition, one causal collection. Generally, taste is not a cause of form, right? But if they're part of one causal collection, you could say the former taste can be a cause of the present form. David, you look like the proverbial deer in the headlights. Okay. And the other is the inference realizing the existence of the present form. As Lati Rinpoche says, thus, independence on a correct effect sign. You know what a correct effect sign is, right? That is a means of inferring causal attributes. So this is a kind of effect sign. When we talked about different kinds of signs, we said that there were correct effect signs, correct nature signs, and correct signs of non-observation. Some of you remember, there were three kinds of possible correct signs. So then as a subdivision of correct effect signs, there is a correct effect sign that is a means of inferring causal attributes. So this is a kind of a sign in which you could infer the existence of form from the existence of taste. So your eyes, someone's going to surprise you. They put some jaggery in your mouth and you taste that jaggery. You can infer the existence of the form from that taste. Thus, independence on a correct effect sign that is a means of inferring causal attributes, two different kinds of inferential consciousnesses are produced. One that realizes the existence of the capacity of the former taste of the molasses or jaggery to produce the present form, and one that realizes the existence of the present form of the molasses. Okay, enough. As Geshe Sopa used to say, that's enough. So maybe like too much digression, okay? So how is that related here? Well, we have a similar situation. The opponent here asserts the following. Now, arising from other may be untenable for seed and sprout, which have no intrinsic otherness, owing to their lack of temporal simultaneity. However, arising from other could exist when causes and conditions, when causes and conditions are simultaneous, since they possess real otherness. So here the example is about eye consciousness and feeling and so forth, which are simultaneous with it. But the classic example from Pramanavartika that is the basis for this is that verse 9 of the first chapter that's talking about inferring causal attributes. You know, the taste and the form are simultaneous and so forth. So there is a way of doing it, but it's not what the Vaibhashikas think. Take, for example, eye consciousness and its concomitant factors of feeling and so forth, which is concurrent factors. So it's just as eye consciousness arises through the mere coming together of the eye's visible form and so on, as well as feelings and so on. So the assumption there is feelings and so on are causes, only in the Vaibhashika sense of helping one another, of being present at the same time, like the example of the tripod. In the same manner, the eyes and so on, as well as the minds that are concomitant with it, that would mean the mental factors, serve as conditions of feeling and so on. So some opponents might assert. Is that starting to make sense, what's being talked about here now? Richard, did I induce some migraine?
I already had a headache.
I'm sorry.
But you're not adding, but rest assured you're not adding to it. Nor is Chandrakirti or Lama Tsong Khapa. It's slowly, but I'm still struggling with it.
Right. Okay. So we see what's being talked about here. It's not mentioned explicitly, even in Lama Tsong Khapa here, that we're talking about the Vaibhashikas who hold this kind of simultaneously arising cause and effect in that sense for their point of view, because they're present and they help one another, their cause and effect. So the response of the Madhyamika is say that if for visual cognition, eye consciousness, what exists at the same time as itself, such as eyes and so forth. So what is that? We're talking about eye consciousness, eyes and so forth means the dominant condition, the eye faculty, I think, right? As well as other concomitant factors like discrimination and so on. They're all those mental factors, like the 5 omnipresent mental factors and so forth, like discrimination and so on, are conceived to be its producing conditions. So if they are conceived to be its producing conditions. So Prasangika would not accept that, right? Those things that are simultaneous with it are not its producing conditions. They are part of one causal collection. In that case, in the case that the Vaibhasikas they're talking about, even if one were to allow such an eye consciousness were to be distinct from discrimination and so on, Jones says, however, since it exists in the same, say that if for visual cognition, eye consciousness, which exists at the same time as itself, such as eyes and so on, as well as other concomitant factors like discrimination and so on, are conceived to be its producing conditions. In that case, even if one were to allow that such an eye consciousness were to be distinct from discrimination and so on, FPMT says if its producers, the eye and so forth, simultaneous with it, and the discrimination and so forth that arise simultaneous with them are conceived to be conditions for an eye consciousness, i.e., in other words, an eye consciousness, then in dependence on discrimination and so forth, existence as otherness would be permissible, would be, say, possible. Okay, let's just see what's happening. Still, since something that already exists at the time of its cause will come into being again, what need is it for it, and it meaning visual cognition, visual consciousness, to arise? There is none whatsoever. There's no need for it to arise whatsoever because it already exists. Wishing to avoid the fault of non-arising. So what does that mean? The opponent here is saying, okay, there's not arising for other. You proved it. You Prasanghikas proved it to us. You debated with us ad nauseum and proved for sequential cause and effect that it doesn't exist. But it has to, arising has to exist. So therefore, there must be example from simultaneous cause and effect. That's kind of what they're saying. So wishing to avoid the fault of non-arising, You, the opponent, may say the effect does not yet exist at the time of the cause. In that case, so we're talking about Samkhya in that case. In that case, the faults of this, how can there be no intrinsic otherness to things that are sequential, we have already shown above. So we showed above in refuting sequential cause and effect, that there's no other production when cause and effect are sequential. And here we're refuting there's no production from others, even if you were to assume that they're simultaneous. Shanka?
I just wanted to remind you to take a break.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So just let me just read a little bit further here, and then you can have something to marinate about while we take a 5-minute break. Just go a little bit further here. In sum, it doesn't say that in the Tibetan. This is Jipa's adding, it's kind of like in summary or in short. This argument demonstrates how, with respect to what are asserted to be cause and effect, even if otherness per se exists, usually Jimpa translates per se as tsam. Here it's shenni yokyang, even if otherness exists. Even if otherness exists, intrinsic arising remains impossible. In this way, the argument shows the impossibility of arising from other. So the previous arguments in verses 17, 18, and 19 demonstrated how, though arising is possible in relation to cause and effect, intrinsic otherness is not possible for them. Right? And how, because of this, arising from other is impossible. Therefore, the statement, quote, there is arising from other, unquote, has long become empty of content, reduced to a mere sound proclaiming such a thing. So this is kind of like the end of this discussion. Still, we're talking about possible arising from other in the next section here, but this is mainly talking about finishing up those sections. So we went through with several verses how if cause and effect were sequential, there could be no other arising, no intrinsic arising from other. If you're not sure about that, you should go back and read. We went through that in great detail. And here, even if they were simultaneous, even if you were to grant there was simultaneous cause and effect, there are other faults that precluded something arising from other. So therefore, the statement, there is arising from other, meaning intrinsic arising from other or inherent arising from other, this has long become empty of content, reduced to a mere sound proclaiming such a thing, or as Venerable Joan translated, then regarding the statement production from other, having become empty of meaning, of the meaning expressed, only the term expressing it remains. So that's just the statement, but it doesn't have any, it doesn't refer to anything, right? Okay, headache time. Maybe it's time to get a cup of tea, or in my case, to stretch my legs. So we're going to take a couple minute break. I will turn off my camera, but be listening. Feel free to debate with one another. I can hear you, and I'll join if it sounds juicy enough. Okay. Again, Shanka. So after that little break, Jennifer has a question. Hi,
Thank you,
Jennifer.
thank you, Venerable George. I'm just trying to parse this out in my head. I'm sure I'm still confused. But is it just, I mean, in a nutshell, is it Vaibhashikas? Some Vaibhashikas are saying there is simultaneous cause and effect. And then in the Pramanavartika, which has a Sautrantika view, are they saying that no, there's no simultaneously, but there's still some kind of one causal collection? But, you know, even if so, like Madhyamikas, well, the logical fallacy would be if there's already something existent simultaneously, well, what's the point of production anyway? Is that sort of the
Yeah,
main point?
getting there. Yeah. So what's sort of assumed here by Chandrakirti when he's bringing this subject up in that verse and in his commentary, and assumed by Lama Tsongkhapa, is that you already know we're talking about the Vaibhashikas who say there's something called simultaneously acting cause, or sort of simultaneously acting condition and so forth. And the reason I mentioned, Geshe Sopa brings up this verse 9 from the first chapter of Pramanavartika is because it addresses that Vaibhashika position there. And it says there is a way that there is a relationship between, let's say, the taste of the jaggery, the molasses, the sugar, and the form of it. But that relationship is not one of cause and effect, and it's not one of being a natural relation. Those are remember when we talked about the three kinds of signs, there were correct effect signs, correct nature signs, where they had the same nature, and correct signs of non-observation. Here we're not talking about non-observation, so it would have to be one of those. It's not a sign of same nature, but it is possible by recognizing that the taste and the visible form and the odor and the tactility and so forth form one causal condition. Notice I leave out sound because sound is of a different continuum. Of those four, there is a way of proving the present form from the existence of the former taste. That is one instant of taste, you can infer the existence of form. So, yeah, and in terms of the faults that are found here by the Prasangika, so leave Pramanavartika aside, because that's just from Sautrantika, sometimes Chittamatra point of view, but certainly not Madhyamika point of view. So from the Madhyamika point of view, there are faults. If that were if the Vaibhashika position were true, there are faults. So there's no production from other. Okay.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
one follow-up question. So,
okay.
But just to clarify also, the Prasangikas would disagree with the Pramanavartika about the causal, the collection. Is that true?
No, that's legit. Prasangika would accept that.
Oh,
it's
okay.
But that's not saying that there's a causal relationship between simultaneous acting things. Okay,
thank you,
yeah, this is difficult, but we're here to chew some dry bones, so worth to present this. You can investigate from that readout, and we can discuss more on Monday. Okay, so let's finish this next section, which will finish a big portion of production from self, but lead up to a big discussion of the two truths. Okay, so here, a refutation of arising from other. Now, this is another examination by examining the four possibilities with respect to effects. So of the various logical reasonings, we've been talking about one, these still talking about four things, that things do not arise from self, other, both, or neither, meaning causeless. Now there's another logical reasoning that's brought up. And the reason it's brought up is because it's in the stanza 21 by Chandrakirti. Otherwise, it could have brought up other things. So Chandrakirti said in stanza 21 of the 6th chapter, if the cause is a producer that produces something, is what it produces existent? You know, like if the what to say, if the cause is a producer, what it produces is what it produces existent? That would seem to be the obvious choice, right? Non-existent. How could it produce something that's non-existent? Both existent and non-existent, or neither existent or non-existent. This is what is called, what is it called in Tibetan, John? Do you know?
Is this mushi?
Yeah, mushi. Mu means what?
Mu means possibilities, I think, or options.
Yeah, alternatives or options, possibilities. So there, you know, there are many examples of mushi for different things. You can talk about the 4 possibilities. So here, so the stanza continues, if existent, if what a cause produces is existent, what need is there for a producer? What would be the sense of that? Well, if what it produces is inherently existent, that means it would have existed before, so there's no need of a producer. If what it produces is non-existent, so if it's inherently non-existent, what can a producer do? It was non-existent before, it will always be non-existent. If both existent, if what a cause produces is both existent and non-existent, what use is it? Let's see what he means. If neither, what use does a producer serve? Okay. So let's see the commentary. If the cause is a producer that produces something other, we will examine, so this is all talking in terms of other production, right? A refutation of arising from other by examining the 4 possibilities with respect to effects. So the context is talking about other production. If a cause is a producer that produces something other than itself, we will examine by asking, is what that cause produces intrinsically existent, inherently existent? Non-exist, I guess you don't have to put the inherently with the non-existent both or something neither existent or non-existent. Now, if for the time being, at the beginning, the effect is intrinsically existent, it's intrinsic, so what is produced is an intrinsically existent other. What need is there for it to have a condition as a producer? What need is there? Because if it's inherently existent, the effect, that means it is never changeable from the Prasangika point of view. If it's inherently existent. Of course, Svatantrika, lower tenets say that there's no problem. Inherent existence exists and things change. But from the Prasangika point of view, if something is inherently existent, it can't change. It can't depend on anything. It's existing from its own side without dependence on anything else. What need is there for it to have a condition as its producer? For, in other words, because if something that has intrinsic existence can come to arise, then what has already arisen will arise again. And this we have already demonstrated to be untenable or unreasonable. For a non-existent effect, also, what can its producer, the conditioned zoo? What can its hypothetical producer do if it's non-existent? Like the horns of a rabbit. And so interestingly here in the FPMT translation, it says, like the horns of a donkey. Okay. So it says, in the Tibetan, it says, Bongbu Ra Tar. Bongbu means donkey. Usually we say Ribong means rabbit. So in this case, the example is not actually the horns of a rabbit, but the horns of a donkey. Do donkeys have horns? Who's a city dweller? I can ask. Richard, do donkeys have horns?
Not the last time I saw one.
So the example is, sometimes donkeys' ears standing up could be mistaken for horns in the same way that the rabbit's horns, a hare's ears may appear to be horns in certain situations. That's kind of the context. At any rate, the actual Tibetan and the Sanskrit say donkey in this case, not rabbit. But anyway, Jimpa's going with rabbit because it's more recognizable. Like the horns of a rabbit, it is not existent. As for the combination of both existent and non-existent, again, what use is a producer? The conditions. What need is there for conditions if it's both existent and non-existent? Such a combination of the two is impossible. Also, with regard to that which is neither existent nor non-existent, is there anything that is neither existent or non-existent? Have you ever heard of that, Michael Hoffman?
No, I wouldn't say no.
Isn't that like Schrodinger's cat?
No, I haven't heard that. Sorry.
No, okay. I just checking with Michael. He was obviously thinking about this, Schrodinger's cat. So what use does the producer, the condition, serve? For that which is neither of the two is impossible. And Jimpa's note 413 says, in verse 4 of the 70 stanzas on emptiness that Nagarjuna composed, it presents the same argument to negate intrinsic arising, examining whether what is produced is existent, non-existent, both, or neither. But that's not the only place that comes. That is one of the famous, when we gave a list, I think some of you may have a printout from before, of the various logical reasonings that are used in the Madhyamaka. That is one of the classic reasonings from these four possibilities. So the word for comes in a lot of cases, but this is talking about these mushi. Okay, so there may be questions there, but I want to just introduce this next section. And Doris, would you be kind enough to put the outline PDF up?
I'm wondering if the page numbers on this PDF are incorrect.
Right. I had 221, I think. Then I changed it to 121. I'm not sure if my eyes were reading incorrectly or whether the PDF I had was mispaginated, but you'll be able to find.
I made a different copy with the correct numbers just in case.
Okay, put up what you feel is the correct numbers there. So this is an outline of this next section. So at this point, Geshe said, this is really a really tough section, and some of you may know, and I don't have it up here, Jeffrey Hopkins' book, Final, what's it called, Shankar?
Final exposition on wisdom. I think that's
what it's called. I think that's what, right. I don't have the text with me. So one section of that is Jeffrey Hopkins' translation from Gompa Rapsal of this very section. Venerable Jones' FPMT translation didn't incorporate that in, although Jeffrey Hopkins had shared that with us when we were at Deer Park. And Joan, although Joan wasn't at Deer Park, I thought she would have had that in the FPMT because for some reason. And Jimpa's translation is different. So we'll have, for this section on the two truths, we'll have three translations to compare with. Jeffrey Hopkins is a very, very good source because he's the fact that he has reserved so much of his translation of Gompa Rapsal after the first 5 chapters, which he published from publication. You know, there was only those first few verses along with Anne Klein that we used at the beginning of the 6th Bhumi. The fact that he has reserved publishing any of these other sections means that he would have gone over this section very carefully. And he has footnotes there that add a lot of explanation. So that's good to have. So do you have that? Is that up yet? Is that outline up?
Yes, it's in the chat.
Okay. Okay. Why don't I have it here?
So Venerable, what are the 3 translations you were talking about? So we have
we have Thubten Jinpa.
Right.
We have the FPMT translation.
Right.
And we have the section in Jeffrey Hopkins' final exposition.
In the final exposition of wisdom section. Oh, yeah. Okay.
In that text, there are several translations. One of the sections about halfway through is on the two truths, and the cover page for that says from Gompa Rapsal. Okay, yeah. So those are the 3 translations. For some reason, okay, I'll have to look at that outline.
I don't see the 3rd translation. Where is that?
You don't have it yet.
Okay.
I will, if you have that book.
I would have it.
Hopkins' final exposition of wisdom. Do you have that book by any chance?
No, I don't.
Okay. So I'll see if I can, I'll talk to Paul, who's off right now, to see if we might be able to get permission just to put that up also. But so this section is very interesting and difficult and sort of pulls together a lot of things. So let's read just the beginning here. Okay. Just let me see here. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. But I don't want to prevent us from moving into this material, but I just, in seeing this Chandrakirti's verse number 21, I'm just kind of struck by how it seems to restate everything. Is that its intention? And it almost seems like a restating of Nagarjuna's first verse in the
no. So the first verse is talking about whether things are produced from self, other, right, both, neither. Those sound like 4 possibilities, but that's a different kind of thing. Here it's talking about if what is produced from other, whether it produces something that's existent, non-existent, both existent or not existent, or neither. So it's a different set.
The causes a producer that produces from the refuse of right.
Okay. Okay. So if you take a look at that PDF, Doris, fortunately, sharp eye. How were you able to change a PDF? Did I send you? Anyway, good. So
working behind the scenes.
Yeah, yeah.
There are ways of changing PDFs.
Yeah, Doris has magical powers.
The
So
deep faith.
Here in the Two Truths chapter, that's not the name that Lama Tsong Khapa called this. This section is actually rebutting objections to this refutation from the worldly perspective. So the reason I have this outline there from Jimpa, take a look what we've gone over before. So from pages 204 to 206, Jimpa gave the outlines from Gompa Ropsel that were actually in Gompa Ropsel, like refuting arising from other. That's the main thing that we've been doing, right? Trying to refute production from other. So there are two main outlines: stating the opponent's standpoint and refuting that standpoint. Stating the opponent's standpoint that was given at that point, what the Samkhya position was, or not the Samkhya position, the general position of production from other. And then refuting that standpoint is where we've been for the last several weeks. That had two parts: refuting in general the standpoint that asserts arising from other, and refuting in particular the Chittamatra standpoint. So we haven't got to the Chittamatra, refuting the Chittamatra standpoint yet. We've all been talking about refuting in general the standpoint that asserts arising from other. So that had 5 outlines. Refuting in general the standpoint that asserts arising from other has 5 parts or 5 outlines. The actual refutation of arising from other, that's what we've just finished. Now, rebutting the objections to this refutation from the worldly perspective. And Geshe-la said, this is the section that's really hard. Okay, that's just what we're about to begin. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th sections we won't come to for a while. The merits of refuting arising from other, how intrinsic arising does not exist in any manner, and the benefits of negating intrinsic arising on both levels of the two truths. That will be coming later. So then where we are now is on page 221, where Jimpa has, if you actually have the text in front of you, it says, rebutting objections to this refutation from the worldly perspective. That has 2 parts. Repelling objections from the worldly perspective. Jimpa is now trying to add some spice by using new words. You could say, refuting. Again, you could say rebutting the objections from the worldly perspective, assuming that arising from other is accepted in worldly convention. Then 2, repelling objections from the worldly perspective on the basis that arising from other does not exist even in worldly convention. Then the first of those outlines, repelling objections from the worldly perspective, assuming that arising from other is accepted in worldly convention, has 2 parts. The opponent's objection that such refutation is invalidated by worldly convention, and the response that worldly convention does not invalidate refutation. So that's on that printed sheet, but that's right in your book. But the first part of it just showed you how we got to this point. We're still in the section on refuting production from others. So finally, when we get to that actual first point, the opponent's objection that such refutation is invalidated by worldly convention. What refutation is he talking about? The opponent is saying that refutation is invalidated by worldly convention. What refutation? Don? You're muted. You're still muted. Maybe on purpose. Okay, doesn't matter.
No, I was distracted trying to print this out, George, so I missed the question, sorry.
Okay, so here, this is, the name of this section is rebutting, no, I'm sorry. The opponent's objection that such refutation is invalidated by worldly convention. So the opponent is some non-Prasangika. They're objecting that a Prasangika refutation is invalidated by worldly convention. What is the Prasangika position that is being invalidated by worldly convention according to these?
Not sure.
Okay, so I think it's that the Prasangika has said that there is no production from other. That is refuted.
Yeah.
Now the non-Prasangikas are going to say, the opponent says, you may claim that the arguments we have put forth to prove arising from other have all been burned up by the fire of your intelligence, you Prasangika bullies, pretending you're so smart, the fire of your intelligence, like dry logs soaked in melted butter. That's what you Prasangikas have so much pride in saying, you know. So go ahead and stir those logs with the blazing fire of your wisdom. It is pointless now to add more fuel. Sounds like sour grapes to me, right? Now, you might ask, isn't it the case that arising from other cannot be established without reasoning? Isn't it the case that arising from other, self-production, cannot be established without reasoning? Does that make, there's a couple of negatives in there. So Doris and Stephen, you like those double negatives also?
Yeah, I'm having trouble with them in that particular sentence, Venerable George.
Now you might ask, isn't it the case that arising from other cannot be established without reasoning? Isn't it the case that cannot be without reason? Triple negatives in that. So do you need reasoning? Isn't it the case that arising from another cannot be established without reasoning? Yeah.
Don't you agree that it's the case that you need reasoning to establish this thing?
Right.
Established, yeah. So, but is there arising from other? Can you establish arising from other? Okay, that's the question. To this, we would say no. There is nothing any reasoning can do about what is established by the world. So this is where we'll be starting after the break, but I just wanted to introduce this to you. So this is saying almost, they're saying what, they're getting a wrong take on what Prasangika talks about, the renown of the world. Remember when we talk about the example I give of the blacksmith saying that, you know, someone says, where's my horse? He said, that's it over there. Or where's your horse? That's it over there. With just sort of by worldly renowned, worldly renown, not renowned. This is a wrong take on the what does it say here? Established by the world. For what is perceived by the world, ordinary beings without analysis, possesses great power. So just take a look at the FPMT translation of that thing where that seemed like the triple negative there. So Venerable Jones said, yeah, so the question, is it, this is on page of the FPMT, this is on page 118. near a little more than halfway down the page. It's this question: is it not that the meaning of asserting production from other is not established without presenting reasonings? I'm not sure if that's any clearer. Okay. So in Jimpa's translation, it says, for what is perceived by the world possesses great power. This point is rendered in the following verse, which is verse 22. Apparently the position of the opponent. Worldly perspective, grounded in its own views, is authoritative, that things come from what is other than themselves is perceived by people. Yeah, come on. Prajingika, what are you getting at? So what's the use of reasoning here in this context? Therefore, thus, other arising is established. What need have we of reasoning? That's the point. So that's where we're going to just sort of priming the pump for after our break. This is the section we're going to start. You have that outline, so you sort of get a point, an idea of where we are. This section is a bit difficult, but very, very interesting. It will pull together a lot of different things about emptiness that we've been studying, reiterating some and clarifying some. So before we end, I just wanted to mention that Brother Ron is quite sick with COVID. He couldn't attend today. He was debating whether to go to the hospital, and we sent him messages. Don't debate. There's no debate. Go to the hospital. Go to the. So we'll when we do our dedications, after checking with you if there are any other final questions, we will do some dedications for Ron. Of course, for the quick return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche will be part of our dedication prayers, but if you're doing the recitation of the sacred names, reciting the names, chanting the names of Manjushri, there are two other translations available that you might find interesting. One has the Sanskrit also. John, I think you have you said you were memorizing the Manjushri Nama Sangriti in Sanskrit.
Yeah, I would love to know of another source for the Sanskrit.
That's Alex Wayman's book. So that's available, like restricted.
That's the one that I'm using. Yeah.
Okay. So you have that. I thought maybe you had the Sanskrit text. And then, of course, for the people in the world who are experiencing, like the people on the Hajj right now in Saudi Arabia, I don't know. The morning I heard an enormous number. What was the latest number of people died? They said
it's like 1,200 or 1,300 so far.
Over 1,000, yeah. And can you imagine?
It's going to increase more because there are lots of people unaccounted for at the moment.
Right. Like that mafia guy I told you about. Karma can arise. It's almost like the hot hells for those people in those quarters. So before we do dedications, anyone have any last questions or comments? Nadine, you okay? Okay. We'll see you in discussion group. Who's the other person in discussion? Not in discussion, in office hour. There was another person. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, so let's Shankar, if you put up the dedications. Due to these virtues, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not yet arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase evermore. And then, for the quick return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher, peerless guru, and assembly of children of the conquerors, the Bodhisattvas, you Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang Drakpa, Lama Tsongkhapa, who is the spiritual father of his two sons, as well as your lineage, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms. Please bestow upon us now the virtue and goodness to accomplish the purpose of this prayer. In holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for both the welfare of the victorious one's teachings and for mother living beings, mother wandering beings, mother sentient beings. You suddenly departed to peace. At this I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels, as well as the great waves of bodhicitta of the Bodhisattvas, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And also by the power of the recitation of the names of Manjushri. Then finally, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends, please live long and stable lives. And then thinking of Ron, who is quite sick with COVID, may the merits, may the collections that we've created today become causes to overcome his illness, for him to recover very quickly. May the merits and wisdom collections that we've accumulated today become causes of overcoming the climate change that is becoming more and more obvious in Saudi Arabia and other places in the world where there are floods, earthquakes, windstorms, all of the four elements involved. May they be abated by these collections. Thank you very much. We will have one last discussion group on Monday, then a break for 2 weeks, and we'll begin after 2 weeks with this section that we've just sort of primed the pump on. So read ahead. If you have Jeffrey Hopkins' text or have the ability to get a copy of it, have that handy. If not, I'll see if we can get an excerpt of this section of his text for us. But at any rate, we have plenty of material for this very interesting coming section. Take care, keep cool and safe, wear your masks when outside. See you on Monday, some of you, hopefully many, and in 2 weeks' time on Saturday. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Venerable Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you.